do you want to just share a little bit about why you're involved in this project of Latifa's?
Sure. Well, I am a longtime friend with Latifa and her family. And when I made my film, Defying the Nazis, we were looking at how do we find people like Martha and Waistel Sharp that were doing great things today. And her family saw the film. And for those who don't know, Natalia, the film is about my grandparents who went to Europe in 1939 to help Jews escape from Hitler. And so we wanted to create an award to encourage other people to do heroic acts. And her family received the 2012 Sharp Rescuer Prize. And what was really important about that was that they were then given the support to go and help refugees in Lesbos, in Greece, people escaping the horrors of the Syrian breakdown and Afghanis who are trying to get away from Afghanistan. And they have literally helped over 1,000 people go from these internment camps to Europe, to get to Germany, to get to France. And really, it's a heroic thing because most of these people, were living in terrible conditions. And really, their work is about how do we help people who are really, really having a hard time, really desperate, looking for a home. And how do you find that home for each person that is right, given that where they're from has been destroyed and there's no home left. And so Latifa and her family went back to Greece to start helping people, and now have gone 9 times to rescue people in Greece. And it's really one of those things where you almost can't believe someone would have the courage to leave their family and leave their home and go into a war-torn place and start helping people. But there are people like Florence and Nightingale who do that, who care so much about others that they're willing to risk themselves to help others. And Latifa and Colin invited their children to do this with them. And that's the other amazing thing is you'll see in the film, their children are their partners in this whole project. So they, unlike my grandparents who left my mom and left my uncle to go do this heroic work, they brought their children with them. And I think that inspires me on so many levels, particularly as I think of what families can do to help others rather than the individual. And family is not just the father or the mother, it's the children too. And in this case, when you're helping other children, having your children involved is a very powerful statement to the people you're helping that, it's not just me helping you, it's us that are helping you. So it's a beautiful story. As I said, over 1,000 people have escaped. And some of them you'll see in the film are now in Germany. We got them all the way from Greece to Germany, which was a tremendous success. That's and awesome. As you can imagine, the German government is very happy to have them. They're really great members of their society. And even though there's some Germans who feel that, we don't have too many refugees, Angela Merkel also received our Sharp Rescuer Prize for allowing over 2.5 million refugees into her country. A tremendous political risk to her. So she's also a Sharp Rescuer. So that's a little introduction. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to share that. But I think what we should do, Sid, is just start the film, unless someone has a burning question. And then by the time the film's over, we'll ask questions more specifically to Latifa herself.
Okay. I also just wanted to welcome Cray to the call. Hello, Cray. How's it going?
Good morning. I've got my coffee here.
It's a very cute little cup.
I got my coffee.
Got mine.
Good. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. And what a fun way to start the day.
Yeah. Cray, want to share anything about your involvement in your work with Latifa?
So I filmed a lot of the footage that we're going to see from this trip to Greece. and went with them on kind of a fact-finding mission as well as an assessment trip. And so we were visiting different refugee camps. We were visiting different centers in Athens, and we're able to see how Athens had changed into a very multicultural city in certain sections, um, which was viewed largely in a positive way. It almost had a feeling of like New York with the different boroughs of the different cultural restaurants, and in this case, it was lots of Middle Eastern, Syrian, and Turkish, and but people were settling and starting to find homes, businesses, and in that sense, giving back, especially in Greece, where the economy was struggling so much. There was something that was starting to happen in Greece, and for many of the refugees on their journey, Greece was thought of as kind of a pathway, but for many, it ended up becoming a home as well. And that's a lot of the work of Shared Humanity, of the stories of refugees that you see in the film, is that, um, you know, a lot of them, they try to go to Northern Europe, Germany, and some of them also stay in Greece. And finding that home, I think, is the light. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the light, in contrast to the shadows. And it is kind of the hope that keeps the refugees going, is that I can find a better life, because that's why these people left, is from torn countries. Um, Sometimes issues related to climate change, but they left destroyed homes, and that has a lot of loss attached to it. And they're trying to find a community, a new home, and so that's kind of some of the journeys that we'll see.
Cool. And welcome, Latifa, the woman of the hour. Hello. You are muted, just so you know.
And actually, Latifa, I want you to stand up and show everyone your beautiful dress.
Okay, well,
Latifa didn't just roll out of bed and grab a cup of coffee. She looks like a queen.
Wow.
thank you.
Oh,
This just newly arrived from Afghanistan, done by the widow of Mazar-e Sharif, for us to sell these products through Share Humanity and give the profit to the widow of Afghanistan and Mazar-e Sharif specifically. And these are women who actually loses their fingers on work as such, because these are all golden thread, and they make these little patches by hand with all kinds of glitz and glittery in a beautiful silk material. So I just want to advertise that for anyone who's interested in these kind of garment, so they could purchase it from these widows, and I could be the one in between to create that kind of relationship. But thank you very much for welcoming me, and happy Sunday to everyone. It is a great, thank you, Sydney, again, for arranging this, and Craig. And where do you want us to start, since you are the moderator, and guide me?
Well, I'd love to just hear maybe a minute or two intro from you about your work and what we'll be learning today, and then I'll show the film. And then after the film, we'll hear a little reading from your book, and then we'll do a group discussion before the next film showing. We have 2 film showings today for different people, depending on when they wake up on Sunday mornings. So,
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so introduce yourself,
Well,
please.
Well, as you all know, I'm Latifa Woodhouse. I am the mother of 5 wonderful children, and I have been a teacher all my life, taught at New York City high schools for 30 years. And recently I wrote a book called Latifa Unveiled, which is this book. And Latifa Unveiled is the story of my life, particularly, but specifically about the work that we do in Greece and also in the United States for a shared humanity with refugees and immigrants. So I would like to read just a passage of my book, Latifa Unveiled, and this book is available on Amazon.com. If anybody's interested, please go to Amazon.com, look for Latifa Unveiled, and purchase your own copy, or let me know through Facebook messaging. We could send you a copy. I could purchase it for you and send it to you. And I would love for you to then encourage 5 or 6 of your friends to go to Amazon.com and purchase Latifa Unveiled, because what this is, I give this message that there's always a light at the end of most of the tunnels. Maybe not all the one that's in the ground, but there is, if it was hope for me, which my hope was very strong, a girl who was born in Kandahar, Afghanistan, which is the most conservative city in the world, I say, the birthplace of the Taliban, that was born there and grew up there, and finally made a 180-degree change in her life by education, education, education. So I thank this morning once again my mother and father for encouraging me and for loving me and for providing me with the education that I got and I have today. And here I am, and this is my book. So now that I'm in my 60s, I would like to read the epilogue part of this book to you to see how my life has made many turns, but the end result is wonderful, beautiful. I am now an American mother, an American wife, and an American teacher in the United States of America, which is the home for all of us immigrants that come from different places, different countries, but this is our home. And we are happy, and I'm also very, very happy for the change of our government. So congratulations to all of us.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a very, very short passage. Well, it's short, but I say short. Okay, this is the reading from the epilogue of the book, which is the last pages. As an older woman, I no longer shy away from an opportunity to talk to men about fairness, human rights, and compassion, especially when it relates to women. It pains me so much to see that we Americans continue to fight this fight. In the land of the free, indeed, Afghan women suffer greatly in the patriarchal culture of Afghanistan. Thousands of young girls as young as 12 or 13 years old are forced to marry older men. If they shaft under the yoke male domination, they often suffer abuse and physical harm. Women may have been granted limited rights legally, but in practice, the abuse of women goes on and on. In Greece, we met women from Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, who were fleeing for their lives from vengeful brothers, husbands, and fathers, simply because they fell in love with a man who didn't fit into the family plans, or because they were imprisoned in an abusive marriage. When I recall the dawn of the feminist movement in the United States in the 1970s, the issues that were raised were ridiculed by both men and women. In many battles were lost. Over time, we have learned through our mistakes how to stand steadfast. It is a matter of believing in our cause, in staying on target. What was different from the feminist movement here in the United States compared to that for women in Afghanistan is that women here have the power of the bully pulpit. Yes, we may still be ridiculed, but compare that to being stoned to death. hung or shot. Fawzia Kufi, Afghanistan's most famous advocate for women's rights and the only woman on the Afghan government negotiating board with the Taliban, was recently wounded in an assassination attempt. This is one of the more egregious aspects of the Afghan woman's life. Not only must a woman not be heard were she to raise her voice in opposition to a powerful man, but she also puts her life on the line. Afghan women who continues to speak up have my greatest respect and admiration. Afghan women are caught in a no-win situation where most men in their society would consider her a heretic, deserving of being killed or ostracized if she voices any objection to her status. Now that Afghanistan is so impoverished, women must contend with multiple problems, the most important being their very survival and that of their children. So, what can be done? Naturally, I cannot discuss women's rights without mentioning Malala Yousafzai, the courageous young woman who believed so strongly in education for girls that she was willing to risk her life for it. After a long recovery, a bullet to her head did not stop her. She went on to become a prominent activist and recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. It is because of her perseverance in courage that the world has become more aware that women's rights are human rights. Just like Hillary Clinton said in the Beijing conference in 2005. Since 2015, the refugee crisis has been one of the most severe around the globe. The war, hunger, no safety, anarchy, joblessness, oppression, climate change in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, in many African countries forced millions of people to abandon their homes and to find their way to Europe. According to the UNHCR, there are 70 million refugees on the move. Since 2016, my husband, my children, and I have been on 8 humanitarian missions to Lesbos, Chios, Thessaloniki, and Athens, Greece, to provide support and help for all refugees. Our very first trip in January 2016 to Camp Moria in Lesbos, we met thousands of refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Iran, Morocco, Egypt, and many other African countries. The heartbreaking stories of loss and devastation that I heard again and again of thousands of refugees during the 1 month that we stayed there, I was fortunate to speak their language and was familiar with their cultures and their Islamic traditions. I heard their stories, provided them with the help that they needed, and was happy to be able to make a difference in their desperation. With our children's help on CrowdRise, we were able to raise almost $25,000 and take that money with us for our rescue and relief missions. These good displaced people had so many needs, like tents to sleep in and firewood in the freezing cold winter of that year in Lesbos, Greece, the kind of food that they were used to at home, warm clothes and jackets, warm socks and shoes, in money to take the boat to Athens, in more money to take the train to Germany or to the other European countries that they had relatives or friends. When we saw the desperation and devastation in Camp Moria that only has a capacity of 2,500 people, and there were 5,000 to 7,000 refugees almost every night. As they were arriving through the Aegean Sea from Turkey to Lesbos, Greece, in those small rubber dinghies that only could fit 20 people, 80 people were placed, would be arriving. We would go there to the shore to provide warm blankets and warm socks and shoes. I saw humanity in despair. Many nights I was not able to sleep until 5 in the morning. I was so taken by their tragic stories that my husband and I established the Sheer Humanity USA nonprofit as a result of this life-altering journey. Our nonprofit has changed as the refugees population is in transit and their needs have changed. In 2016, refugees were allowed to go to Germany, Sweden, Denmark, and other European countries. On March 20th, 2016, the EU closed its doors and the refugee situation changed. Now, our nonprofit Share Humanity USA is providing services to meet the needs of refugees in Greece by having English in computer classes, in other classes that would empower the displaced people with the skills such as carpentry, plumbing, electric engineering, working as waiter and waitresses in music classes. We truly hope to make a meaningful, enduring difference. Plans are underway for renting a bigger building in Athens to accommodate many more refugee students in many more classes, teachers teaching not only the English and Greek language in computers, but many other needed skills for a decent future jobs in Greece. Presently, we have primarily directed our ShareHumanityUSA.org funding to our Women's Center, which is a safe space for women. The refugee needs are now greater than ever, and Shared Humanity USA is in need of funding to reach these amazing, determined, and hardworking people who have lost their home country for no fault of their own. To learn more, please check our website, sharehumanityusa.org. Peace and love to all of you, Latifa Woodhouse. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Latifa. That was powerful. Wow.
Thank you.
So what do you guys think? Should we watch the film or do we want to do some commentary first?
Commentary first and then the film, I think. And maybe not the whole film. Maybe that
5 minutes.
we're into the story. Maybe we just watch the first 5 minutes. But anyway, commentary, I think, is right.
Great. Well, I can start. I feel like I'm inspired to do more just reading or hearing you read that, Latifa. Your example is powerful and something that we could all be doing more of, definitely.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Thank you for saying that. And my hope and my goal is, since we're all human, and especially the women in us and me and in you, as we say, women's rights are human rights. And every day, the women of Afghanistan, the women of Eastern countries are suffering, and they're killed either as honor killing or any other reasons for, you talk back to your husband or you talk back to your father-in-law, and they're put in prison, in jail. And I did ask, I brought that question in the United Nations to the High Commissioner. I said, why is that happening? And he said, I was just in your country. And this was about a few years ago when Karzai, who is my third cousin, was the president of Afghanistan. And he said, I went and talked to the president. And what they're saying is, in Islamic law, if a woman leaves the house, that was his statement to me, without permission of the husband, then she is divorced and she ran away we have to imprison her and put her for that fault. So that's the kind of stuff. The freedom is totally, totally taken away from any woman in Afghanistan if they don't obey the strict rules. And they use Islam for their purpose. That's not what Islam says. That's not what I, as the daughter of Imam of 20 generations, would know or agree with. So that's my comment on this, and I thank you very, very much. And any questions, please feel free to ask any question, any concerns, anything you want to know. I'm here for you. I'm ready to answer if I can.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Artemis.
Now that the Trump administration is moving all the U.S. troops out of Afghanistan, what will happen?
Well, it's chaotic, and it will be more chaotic because years ago, I believe that there shouldn't be any American troops because they were mistaken for Russian. The people of Afghanistan, 90% are uneducated. They didn't know. This was years ago. But now that the troops were there, I think there should be a solution, not necessarily troop as army, but troops as education, as structure, as safety, the reconstruction plans that Afghanistan needs the help of big countries. The Afghanistan needs the help of America, of the world. There should be a plan, like what they did during World War II to rebuild Germany, to rebuild Afghanistan with education, with universities, and to really get rid of these so-called Taliban that they always go to the negotiation table and then you turn around and they bomb this one. Recently, if you're all aware, 19 young, beautiful members of the faculty of law were gunned down by ISIS. Those kind of things should not happen. These are the future of Afghanistan, these men and women. And if you pull the troops or you don't participate in the peace process truly, then the future of Afghanistan is gone, because Afghanistan is a kind of country that is located and it connects east to west. Therefore, it's always been a strategic part, or the location by itself requires that the east wants to get to the west. For example, through the Indian Ocean, they want to go back to Europe and America, of course, has big hands in that too. And China has its eyes on Afghanistan. And of course, the little country like Iran and Pakistan are totally immersed in all of that killing and the devastation for the Afghan people. But the Afghan people are wonderful people. They are hospitable, they are kind. Yes, they're not as educated as they should be, but that is also no fault of their own. It's the fault of its government.
So Latifa, I have a question. For someone who is new to this kind of work, besides donating, how would you recommend they start getting involved? And also, before you answer, I want to welcome Sheila to the call. Welcome. We're just doing a little bit of Q&A. Latifa just read from her book, and then after the Q&A, we're going to show Light and Shadows, the film.
Welcome, Sheila. So what was your question, Sid?
So besides donating, how could someone get involved and help with this kind of work?
Okay, there's many ways to get involved, because as I told you, we have been there 9 times. The time I wrote the book was 8, but we have had the Share Humanity trips to Greece 9 times with my children at different times. With Craig came with us also, and Artemis will be coming with us. We could do a donor trip. You could get involved. You could go to online, sharehumanityusa.org and ask your questions and get it, that same question that you have. We have on Skype or by Zoom in Greece. We could get you involved by, giving your financial support, because what we do is we are very young and our budget is very limited, and we do need all your financial support that you're able to give us. And you could send a check through PayPal or credit card to sharehumanityusa.org. And plus, always feel free to ask these questions. There are many ways. The one unfortunate thing presently is that because it's COVID time, so we cannot really get you involved to take you there, but we have that plan. We want to take volunteers. We want to take donors to Greece, to different parts of Greece, to show them firsthand what these refugees are going through and what devastation is happening there. But the unfortunate thing right now with COVID is everything is under control of the government of Greece. We can't travel. We ourselves, Colin and I and my children, were planning to go this September, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to do that. So during this time, all we need is your financial support, because we are still paying the rent for the center. We're paying the teachers. We cannot deprive them of the money. And also we have different programs with our partner called Team Humanity of Denmark in Lesbos, because recently, if you all recall, this was all over the news, that Camp Moria burned to nothing, and there were 23,000 people, and from that 23,000, 13,000 was moved to a different camp. And in that camp, according to Salam al-Din, who is the founder and president of Share Humanity, told me that they are so unequipped. They don't have showers. They don't have running water. So he built another camp right beside it. And the European countries are very kind and aware, and it's closer to Greece, Germany and Denmark. So they contributed about 54,000 euros for Salam to develop, to create another camp right next to it with showers and washing machines and running water. So we are working through Salam al-Din and his group in Denmark to contribute the money that you give us. Every penny goes directly there to use presently for rescue and relief, plus for all the teachers' salary and the center rent.
Yeah, and I would add that COVID is also having a big impact on the camps, which are these contained zones where people are living very close together in tents, using the same bathrooms, eating in the same areas often. And so, that was part of the frustration that led to the fires, is that the situations are very difficult right now. And the situation has often been talked about as like a refugee crisis. Like we first started hearing those terms dating back to 2016. And in many ways, it's also a crisis of services, and a crisis of how these countries are dealing with the refugees. And so it's often framed like the crisis is caused by these refugees, which is true on some level, but it's also a crisis on the side of the countries of how are they able to create a sustainable way to settle people, to integrate them into society, to set them up, in a position where they can succeed and have jobs. And just for some context of this center that Latifa mentioned, in Latifa's book, she talks more about kind of the importance of education. And for her, that was, her calling card, that if I can get an education and learn English, and, that's going to be my ticket, both as a woman to rise up in society and have roles that maybe weren't traditional for Afghan women. And now, what this center is doing, and maybe Latifa, you can talk more about it, but describe a bit of like, what is this center in Athens? Because to set the stage, like all these refugees, they arrived at Athens. There, as I said, like there is a crisis of services, and these refugees are in many cases, often even some of the more privileged citizens that are leaving. They're they're doctors, they're accomplished people that their entire identity has just been replaced with that one word, refugee. But they're so much more than that word. Not only are they family members and brothers and sisters, and members of their schools, or members of their um, mosque or church or religious center, but it's also like, to have a center. In this case, what Shared Humanity is doing is a women's center, where they're teaching different skills, computer skills, also craft skills. But to have that kind of a base allows these people to start rebuilding their lives in their new country, with some income, with a community, and with just being able to kind of get back on their feet and move from a tent to a home, and for the kids to go back to school. And these sort of small steps are key and important to, kind of having someone be able to turn again from not just that one word, refugee, but back into kind of all their potential and possibility of who they are as a person, as a human. Latifa, do you have anything that you can say about this center?
I just want to, yeah, I just want to add to what you said about Women's Center. See, we went several times, as you know, but the one time in 2017, we went to really ask um, each individual who were living in Victoria Park or Ammonia Park. These are two big parks full of refugees, that they sleep there at night, and they get to know other people, and they're homeless. So I basically took a pad and a pen and interviewed each single one of them, maybe about 200, 300 refugees. And at that time, we originally, Colin and I, with the help of our manager, Ramin, who was an Afghan refugee, but much more established and going to a university there, opened center which were for young men and women and children. That center was flourishing and was great, but I heard a lot of complaints from the women, because as they are women from Afghanistan, and the men from Afghanistan, Syrian, the women and men in those countries, because they are always kind of separated, they're not in the same arena, except for college right now, then they were being teased, or they were not comfortable. And most of those women that complained to me were women who had ran away from men because of the abuse that they have been through. So I got the idea in my head that we should, as a women's rights person, create another center. And that center is specifically called Safe Space for Women. And in that space is safe space for women, we had about 35 women that would come with their either little children if they had, if not, alone, every day, for learning English, learning Greek, learning computer skills, and doing knitting, sewing, and making a different kind of pastries and cooking classes. And they felt very comfortable. Although some of the teachers of the English and Greek were young men, very well established, and they were also refugees. That was another purpose. We wanted to empower refugees for refugees. So the teachers were refugees, either Syrian or Afghan or Iraqi, and the students were also refugees from different countries. And that worked very well for us. And it's been now 3 years that is in progress, working for us. And these women are flourishing like you wouldn't believe it. I was there in 2019, last year, I was there in October, and I invited Marina Goldman, who's the actress in the film Defying the Nazis, The Sharp War, and Sarah, her best friend. They both came from Massachusetts and brought lots of goodies and gifts, blankets for little children. And they saw it with their own eyes, and they were astonished by the fact that these Afghan women who were so oppressed, and these Syrian women who were so under control of their men, now we're sitting in a center where there's a music teacher. Yeah, of course, the music teacher is very modern, and he was, he spent a lot of time in Sweden, but now in Afghan Swedish. And he was teaching them the guitar and singing. And these women are singing and they're flourishing and they're laughing. And I had tears of joy in my eyes because I said, wow, isn't that a transition for a woman who could not get out of her home without a burqa, and if she talks back to her husband, she's divorced and she's imprisoned. Now here is the joy of freedom. They are singing, they're laughing, they're happy. And I was very, very touched and very happy to provide that kind of center. And it's still going on. And these women are, I mean, even at COVID time, they did it for 6 months with their masks on. But of course, they have to follow all the criteria of distance, social distance, and all of that. So instead of 35 students in one class or two classes, we had them 7 students per class, but all day long. And that all costs a lot of money for us, but we don't mind, and we will do anything. And with your help, donors, please, please, this is a very serious issue. If you could empower these people to get their freedom back, they are smart, they're intelligent, they are brave, they're courageous, they're hopeful, but they need the to give them something to fish with, and they could become empowered and be their own wonderful people, even better than me or my husband or my children. They're so smart, just like Ray mentioned. Engineer, doctors, teachers, they all come through the Aegean Sea. And if they survive and they make it to Europe, they become the best citizen of the world.
So, in addition to donating, maybe this holiday season, instead of asking for gifts, we could all ask for a signed Latifa Unveiled book, because those funds will also be directed. And we could also simply share on our social media channels and with our email contacts and with our friends the work that you're doing, so that our network can also donate. So thank you so much, Latifa, for sharing that. And any other questions before we share the film, or a couple minutes of the film?
Colin, do you want to come and watch the film?
I do want to say I did put in the chat a link to Latifa's book if anyone's interested. And all the proceeds are going to Shared Humanity anyways, but you can also just donate straight to Shared Humanity. And I think we said like donations of $25 get one book, or donations of $50 will get 2 signed copies, so one as a gift. But what I'm struck by, and maybe what we'll see in the film, is kind of the full circle nature of Latifa's story, that you yourself, Latifa, grew up in Afghanistan and lived there as a young girl through school. And in many ways, how you've, with Shared Humanity and the work of Shared Humanity, are now helping other young women and women of all ages to give the gift of education, really, which there's no limit to what's possible. And that's kind of what we're trying to see, is where can that possibility go. So by also giving that to the hands of refugees themselves to teach each other and lead each other, I think is not only the right way to do it, but is an inspiring model for the refugees themselves, who can see themselves, in the leadership roles. So I think that's important, and also an effective part of the program.
Okay. Welcome, Colin.
Okay.
Hey, Colin.
Thank
Hello,
you.
good to see you all.
Here's Colin, the man of the hour. He was the motivation behind all of those trips, because he was the first one during Thanksgiving of 2015, came down and said, Latifa, I am going to Greece. Did you hear on the news, Alan Kurdi was washed to the shore, and how could we tolerate that? And he started us on those missions. And so I give a lot of gratitude to my dear husband, my partner in the human rights work, and also to my dear friend Artemis Jakowski and my children who have always participated in Cray, also the men of the hour, who went with us and filmed most of this film. So let's start the film.
Okay, great.
Great.
Let Colin introduce himself one more. Just
Well,
say more about
thank you for the nice introduction, Latifa. I also brought her coffee right now, so I think that might have something to do with the compliments. But no, you know, I want to thank you all for being here and for caring enough and being willing to expand your understanding, our understanding of the tragedy and the desperation that we as human beings have foisted on others, innocent people. And my hope is that more and more people will understand that these folks are just like us. They come from all walks of life, and for no fault of their own, they've been cast away from their country, their home, their community. They have lost loved ones, and yet they keep pushing on to us. And we have to be worthy of they're receiving them. And it's not the us is Europe, the us is the people, the Western countries that have resources and have had opportunities that if given to another person, like the people we've met, they will excel and they will do wonderfully well, and they will strengthen and build any country that they come into, and also make it a much more diverse and a much more exciting place. That's because, and it hurts us that right now we have COVID and we can't get over to Greece. We can't meet with people. We can't do on the ground responses. So we are keeping things going there as Greece shuts down, and we've maintained our presence there. And then hopefully when it opens up, it'll open up the hearts and minds of people. And that I'm so happy that the Biden administration has said that they're going to increase refugee arrivals by 100 to 125,000.
Whoa.
And right now we are at the absolute lowest point in our history, and that's been brutal to those people who needed help. Many actually who are former translators for our military in various places overseas. So that's just not fair, and it's just not right. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Movie, please.
Thank you.
Movie, please, Greg.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate hearing your story and what you're doing for refugees. And just a little thing. I mean, I thought while you were talking about this idea, it seems like if refugees need a place to go, you might want to connect with like Airbnb. We are Airbnb hosts in Vermont, and we have guests coming through, but we would love to, we sometimes do support people who just need a place for respite,
Sure.
And that's a huge network of people who have a space available to welcome guests, and give this kind of attention that you were just talking about in terms of welcoming, people for their humanity,
Yeah, thank you. Many of these folks don't have money, so
I'm saying, as a host, you can choose,
yes,
whether you want to accept money or not, so
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I like that idea. Maybe we have an Airbnb charitable initiation where people give parts of their home to people. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Great idea.
And the other way, maybe in response to Sid's question, I think passing this along to other people, I see this is being recorded, so getting as many people to hear Latifa's story as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you,
It's really
Fred.
what we can do if we don't have the money to, ourselves, but getting the story out there.
That is so important. That is really.
Thank you
Yes.
so much,
Thank
Frederick,
you.
for saying that. I appreciate that you are touched by my story. And that is so wonderful to have these kind of friends to really share this love that we carry for our refugee population.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, some of this comes from my mom, my 93-year-old mom sitting
Hi,
here
Mom.
watching. And
Suzanne.
she was an activist, back in the 60s and 70s
Really?
for women's rights. And, I think that, it's why I am who I am. But it's been a fight for a long time. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I hear you, and I'm just really inspired, Latifa, by what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say we're here at Artemis's house, and I love the signs that say Black Lives Matter, and also we're all immigrants. We are all immigrants to North America, to this continent. Every single human being.
That's right.
It took risks and traveled hundreds, thousands of miles to get here, and we can't forget that we are immigrants. And how dare we close the door to other people? We can do it in an orderly fashion. We can open our door, but just to say that refugees who are unworthy to be here in our society is just not right. It's wrong. So thank you very much for your advice and your counsel. We need a lot of that. We do need to build a network. And as Artemis says, we have to also, we are not currently working in the United States, but we have to band together. All who care about refugees must band together and be a force without a doubt. And again, we'll make our countries better and more, just wonderful. So thank you again.
And I love the Airbnb idea. I don't think it would be difficult for Airbnb from a functionality perspective to add a little checkbox where you're open to refugees. And, we could partner, or Shared Humanity could try to form a partnership with Airbnb in that way. So that could be really cool.
Wonderful. Yep.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
Well, right now we're going to see the movie.
All right.
Can we see the movie?
Time. Okay, I'm gonna my screen now.
Yeah, we will. Can I have a little bit of that?
Sure.
Just a tiny.
I got you. No, I got you an egg sandwich. No,
Okay.
you want this? No,
That's okay. That's okay.
it's a good one. Yeah, it is.
All-time high of
You guys-
6 million refugees. Worst refugee crisis since the Second World War.
These are people just like us. And it's very easy to be in their shoes. It's very easy.
These are the refugees of war, of devastation. People are on the move to either die in the Aegean Sea or make it to Europe, make it to America.
It made us all ask, how could the dead babies be floating ashore? How could this happen in this day and age?
Make sure you guys are muted
I
if
don't
you're
submit.
not on.
Life doesn't stop, and I will not stop.
My father tell me, Zahra, you have life now. It's okay. You are free now.
And the light will go on. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
There's a pushback everywhere in Greece now. People are tired of it. They lost their tourist season. They lost huge amounts of revenue. They're inundated with people. The people on the islands are angry because the Greek government won't let refugees off the island. So the whole island has become an incarceration camp.
It was not a conversation, it was more of a conviction, being part of this now journey that we've been on for the past 2 years.
What could a couple of people do? We didn't realize how serious this situation was.
Our entire family got together and we worked together. We're going to go to Greece. How do we do that?
We've been able to go to Greece 3 times in the last 18 months. We're going to go back again. We're going to help build a sustainable worker cooperative in Athens where people can work, they can earn money, they can recover their dignity and their self-respect, and they can prepare themselves for eventual settlement.
My husband and I and my adult children have dealt with thousands of refugees. We bought rice, oil, beans, tomato sauce, and brought them, for 2,000 people.
I feel the responsibility to go to Greece and to take an active part in helping with this refugee crisis.
Around 500,000 Syrians escaping from the war decided, because not having the condition of surviving in neighboring countries, just to cross the Aegean Sea, enter Greece, and to these 500,000 of Syrians, many other nationalities, Afghan, Iraqi, Pakistani, and many other nationalities started following this human river. More than 1 million people entering, mainly through Greece. Migration is part of the human being DNA.
We've just landed in Lesbos, which is a Greek island about 6 miles from the border of Turkey. Along the shores, you'll find several of these dinghies that have brought refugees over. The distance is not far at all, but these waters are extremely dangerous, and thousands of people have lost their lives.
When I see the boat and the sea, a lot of water, I feel so bad. Why we are here? Why we are not in Syria? It's really bad for me, and my father say I cannot stay in Syria. Syria now so bad for me, for my daughters, for all my family. When we are asleep, when so tired because so long, the man, hey, wake up, now we have to go in the night. So in the night, when we have a problem, who can help? Who can help us? And he say, this is not my problem. I will make the boat and you can go. Bad situation, the boat, we have problem. And my father say, my mother, please, guys, it's okay, be relaxed. We have SIM card for all the world. I buy one in Turkey, and I put it in my phone, and then I call Greek people, and the Greek people answer, and I'm so happy because they come.
The dark boat, the dark Syrian life, the dark Turkish life, but look at the light that you came. Because you're determined, you're strong. 65 million people that are on the move today. How do we mobilize this world for love and for all? I come from a long line of clerics and imams in Afghanistan. We always greet our friends and our acquaintance with peace be upon you and peace is accepted. The unfortunate thing is that Afghanistan has not seen peace for the past 40 years.
Toward the end of the film is really that some people, because of the help of the Woodhouses, are able to leave. And what we don't have in the film yet is that girl that you hear speaking, Zata, does make it all the way to Germany and now is living with her family in Germany. And you help fulfill their goal of becoming, having a safe home Germany may not be her final home. Maybe she'll come to America and go to the university.
She wants to. She wants to come to America. And Zahra with her family, which is two other sisters and a brother and mother and father, they were in Greece. We were friends for 3 years. Finally, we worked with her very closely. She's my adopted Syrian daughter, and her sister is incredibly bright, both girls. What happened was they made it to Germany, but her feelings about Germany is not as great as it was about Greece. She loved Greece in the freedom, and the culture was much closer to her culture. But they didn't have a place to live. The UN only gave them 2 years of rent, and after that, everybody was kicked out and said, "You're on your own," and they had no way to go. So they made it to Germany with a fake passport. I mean, it's a long story of Zahra's life. But now that she's in Germany, she tells me that the Germans are so structured, and they've been put in a camp which is far away from the city of Hamburg and 3 hours away, and she calls it a jungle. It's all green, and they can't go anywhere. And when they have an appointment, if they are 1 minute late in the appointment, usually they go by train 2 hours to this city to get their visa or passport or whatever, the immigration laws that they have to obey. She says, if I'm 1 minute late, then my appointment is postponed for another 6 months. So, and she said, look, I told you I want to be a journalist, and you all send us, thanks to Artemis and Craig, a very wonderful camera that we wanted to encourage her to go become a journalist through that camera and report to us all the great work that she was doing in Greece with the refugees herself. She was a refugee, but she was helping other refugees on the street. And now she says there's no chance for schooling. First, it's COVID. COVID has made a big impact, like Craig mentioned earlier. And then another thing is they are in this beautiful, she says the jungle is beautiful, but it's not for me. I'm a people's person. I want to engage with other people. I want to walk around. I want to help children. She was a teacher for other refugee children in a center in Greece. And she says no opportunity as such is available. And the structure is really killing their cultural values and traditions and their spirit, because they're different people, their food is different, but all in all, the comfort is there. For example, there is water, there is heat, they're in these little bungalows, which she showed me, we saw it. But the unfortunate thing is that the opportunity that she was thinking, when you think of Europe and America, you think of, wow, the land of opportunity, I'm here. But my hope is eventually she'll make it. It will take time. It takes time. I have taught 30 years international students in the United States of America. When they first come, they're all discombobulated and they're nervous and they're very worried about their home countries. It takes them 3 to 6 months to get adjusted. After that, they don't want to leave. They don't want to go back home. These are students who come to college and then have to go back home. So the same with Zahra, she'll get used to it. But again, she is a Syrian, and they like a lot of being together and meeting people. Just hit the light.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Okay, it's doing it. Go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's what it is, Zahra's story. But there are other stories. We met a young man in Camp Moria, Khalid, who happens to be from the same street that I grew up on in Kandahar. And Khalid was, that poor young man who was 19 at the time we met him, had been through so much. He was imprisoned in Greece in Camp Moria for 4 months. We got him a lawyer. It's a very heartbreaking story, but this young man was so determined and so hopeful. Now, after walking through 14 countries, literally walking, and being pushed by the Croatian policemen, by the Bosnian policemen, hit, he lost his leg almost, and he ran on the mountains, in the jungles, he tells me. He finally made it to Italy, and from Italy, he flew to Switzerland because he had in the camp called One Happy Family, a teacher from Switzerland. And we met that teacher, and she was always impressed by his poetry about his mother, and his English was getting better and better. And he made it to Switzerland, but he was almost on deathbed. And the Swiss people, which is amazing, and their government is amazing too, they took him to the hospital. He stayed for 3 months in the hospital, got his strength back. Now he is one of the soccer player with their team, with all Swiss boys, and he has the best life. He tells me all the time, look at, this is heaven. I was in hell. And these are all the great success stories of these refugees, and I have many. I have many who calls me from Germany. Hey, auntie, come visit me in Germany. We have flowers in front of our house. They now have little houses. It's incredible what happens to these people. They are like us. I always say, we're them, they're us. Opportunity given, they will make it. Please, they'll become great citizens. They'll become great musician, cooks, whatever field that they go to, doctors, lawyers, but let them in. Open the doors, Europe. Open the doors, America. That's my message. Go.
Colin, I would love you to talk about hierarchy of needs and where people are in this stage of life when they're in hierarchy of needs. Yeah. We're going to show you guys a chart.
Oh, that's interesting. When I listened to Sahara, yes, what she came across on a boat, she risked her life with her father, her family. Her father is blind. They made it. It was neat when she said, she called and the Greek people answered. Yeah. It wasn't the boat answered, the Coast Guard. It was the Greek people answered, and that it's so neat. And it's a truth, I think, that she said her connection. But now it's getting tougher to her. And I was saying to Artemis, it's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. We respond to to help people save their lives. That's at the very basic level. People need food, water, they need diapers. That's still ongoing. And then as people move through this process, Zahara is now safe. She's safe. She was finally, when she made it to Athens, she was safe. And now in Europe, she's safe. But she's now wants belonging, and she wants love, and she wants relationships and friends. And then she's going to want to build her esteem. She's going to want to have prestige and a feeling of accomplishment. And finally, she's going to want self-actualization. And that's what we can do. We can help somebody move through this hierarchy. If we can at least take care of the safety and the basic needs, or we'll never get to those other parts of a human being. And that's the risk. Yeah, you might save somebody, but you never give them an opportunity to achieve what we would call self-actualization, or this sense of worth. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So in terms of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where are people? They're now not at the very lowest level necessarily, but they are looking for belonging and love needs. They have their physiological needs not entirely cared for. So part of their insecurity is that they're not quite done with the first part. This is a progressive. So because they have some physiological needs, they still are stuck there, but they have enough of that taken care of and enough of the safety needs now. They're looking for how to belong and love needs. And then, of course, we want them to be able to progress to esteem needs and self-actualizations, like any of us want that. And so that's really, you making that connection, Colin, between their experiences and this important distinction of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very good correlation.
Yeah, I think it'll help us as we continue the work in this field. We'll have a sense of where we are in the evolution of our partners, the people that we hope to serve. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about your kids. They're not here with us. They're not on the phone, so you can embarrass them. But all your children have been involved in Shared Humanity. 4 of your children have traveled with you. One of them is a lawyer who does legal defense work for one of your most important partners.
Right.
So talk about each of your kids, from Jessica to the youngest, Alexandra, about what they have contributed and what they've learned as people.
Well, okay. Thank you, Artemis, for asking this question about my children or our children. Our children, we have been blessed by 5 wonderful children. Don't ask me how did we do it. We did it, and they're all growing and they're all working, thank God, knock on wood. But what happened was when Colin announced in 2015, when the issue with Alan Kurdi happened, when he was washed to the shore of Aegean Sea, Colin said he's going. I said, I'm definitely going because I speak their language, I understand their culture. So it's just like what Martha and Waistel did, during World War II. I said, Artemis has called on us that who's going to walk in the shoes of Martha and Waistel? And I want to walk in the shoes of Martha. And Colin wants to walk in the shoes of Waistel. We're nowhere near their heroic work or what they accomplished, but we want to do that kind of work for humanity. So my daughter Alexandra said, Mom, I want to go too. She was working in UNICEF at the time, and she was dealing with a lot of these issues with the undermined children and young people. So we said, great. And then I went to my congregation and I announced it, and one of my doctor friend who's a pediatrician, she said she wanted to go with us. So we had a delegation of 4 people that we went to Lesbos, Greece, and that was the first winter after many, they said never has happened, that it was snowing in Lesbos, Greece, where we rented a place, was in a resort, and the resort was freezing cold. But Alexander went with us on our first trip. And the next trip in 2016 that we took in August was with Sarah, Evan, my son, who also are very, very interested. Sarah works for Netflix, and she is we're very well aware and in touch with all these international stories and cultures, and was very touched. She's a human rights person through and through because of her love for humanity, and she is always one of our child who in my Great Neck neighborhood would always bring wonderful, great looking Black people. And my neighbor, the doctor, would say, what is Sarah doing with this person? And I would say, Gail, that's her best friend. So it's, that kind of family. We are a mixed international immigrant, like Colin said, family, that our kids also have been inspired by our values and they live our values. So Sarah went with us and she made best friends, and boy, did she made those kids happy. Every camp we went to, Sarah was using Snapchat. My other daughter worked for Snapchat at that time. And the kids were laughing, and it was something unusual for them, especially the Syrian kids. We went to a camp that had 3,000 people, and for 9 days they were on food strike because they wouldn't eat the food. And this woman cried to me and said, tell President Obama, it's not just, what is the Syrian president named Bashar or Putin? It's not just Putin, it's America too. Please, what have we done? We have not done anything. Get us out of this camp because they're feeding us the army dry, stinky noodles, and we throw it in the garbage and we're not going to eat. One young woman actually died of starvation at that time. We were there. But Sarah made wonderful friends. To get back to Sarah, and she brought lots of gifts and laughs and happiness. And Evan, on the other hand, who is a soccer player and a soccer coach, he played with all these young kids and soccer, and he bought them soccer balls and soccer shoes. And it was just a happy, wonderful time for my children and Colin and I. And we were proud of them that they related to these kids just like they would relate to their own brother, sister, or best friends in Great Neck, Long Island. So this was a great trip for all of us. And then we were there for a month. That was in August. Very hot in Thessaloniki and also in Lesbos, Chios. Then we went again, well, Sophia went with us too on that trip. And then we went in 2017 again twice. And Sophia, who is a #1 supporter, I would say, and I've written that in my book, of Sheer Humanity in terms of her salary, the money that she gives, and the love that she gives. She brings all kinds of arts and all kinds of games for the kids and dance with them and do facial art. And, the kids are just loving Sophia. And we love her too because she's so into this whole Sheer Humanity thing right now. She's the president of 212 in Manhattan, which is another nonprofit for education.
And share that Sophia is the daughter that's speaking in the film.
Sophia's, when she's walking on the shore in Lesbos and saying, look at these dinkies and, the people have died. She's very sensitive to this issue, and she's done a lot for Sheer Humanity, and she's actually our #1 supporter. And I appreciate that, after Artemis's foundation. And the other one is Jessica Woodhouse. Jessica Woodhouse is our oldest daughter. She's an attorney. She has never had time. She would love to go with us. She supported us with events here. She's contributed, but she does the legal work. So when Salam al-Din, our #1 partner, who is doing a lot of great work right now in Lesbos from Denmark, he was put in jail because they said he's a threat to the Greek society for doing humanitarian work, and he's trafficking these refugees. All he was doing was, the refugees were drowning. He, with the Spanish guards, went there with his own yacht and saved the refugees from the danger of dying. And the Greek authority, the Coast Guard, all came, surrounded his yacht, took his yacht away from him, and put him in jail. And my daughter was very instrumental in that. And also Colin went to different parts of the United Nations, and I did too, to talk to lawyers. So finally, with a very wonderful, wealthy man, Mike Haber, who was from Switzerland, he got the best lawyers. I guess Switzerland has better lawyers than us. And Salam was free after 2.5 years to go back to his work, which is a humanitarian #1 and our hero. And he's still working now. He's not allowed in Greece, but he's from Denmark and Germany. He's on the German parliament. And then Alexander Woodhouse, or Alexander Tchaikovsky? No, Woodhouse. Alexander Woodhouse is, as I told you, on the first trip, on the second trip, she is she's our social justice queen of the Woodhouse's family, because as a child, she would call Hillary Clinton's office from UUSC, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and say, Hillary, what about the situation in, Uganda at that time? Yeah, Darfur? Yeah. So Alex is from childhood motivated to social justice, to women's rights, to human rights, and she's now working for us part-time as a Sheer Humanity promoter and marketing person. And I'm very proud of their work. They've all been involved, and they're all supporting us. So that's it. Any questions?
Well, it looked like before this portion that Frederick and Cray unmuted. I think they were going to say something. I don't know if you guys remember, but I just want to make sure you get a chance.
Sure.
Wait a sec. Before we do that, Sid, I would like Colin to say a word about each of his children and why going with his children has changed his parenting, but also his relationship with his children as adults.
Well, that's a good question. I don't want to overindulge people with our family, but they led us. I can't say that we always led them. When I announced that I was going, right away, their response was positive. And actually, they went to GoFundMe and raised money. We had no money for our first trip. They raised about $30,000. No, but and we paid ourselves, certainly. But that money went out directly to the hands of refugees, and that was before we were a charity. So we could not have done it, or could not have had such an impact had they not been our partners. And together, we've really learned a lot. I mean, we've shared tears, we've shared laughter, we've shared strategy sessions. And I think we've developed a new sense of respect for each other and appreciation of the talents that each one of us brings to bear for this on this one cause that motivates all of us. And that's what I think the neatest thing. These are our young adults, and they're our advisors, we're their advisors, and we come together. We have our disagreements, but they're resolved on behalf of the cause that we
Give an
involved
example
in.
of some of the disagreements you've had.
Oh.
Just so we understand the dynamics.
Well, in the field, it's very tense. It can be at times dangerous. It's uncertain. Not so much anymore because
Or
people.
Latifa went with a policeman and they said,
Yeah,
don't go there.
no, I mean it's been difficult. It's just been tough when you're on the ground because Latifa has an affinity for these folks and knows them because of the language and the culture. Our kids did not, to a great extent. So they had to learn how to interact and how to be comfortable. Once comfortable, then their humaneness came out, but they had to be tutored quite a bit. And sometimes that's not very comfortable. But Latifa was instrumental in bringing them to these folks. And then there's always debates about strategy. And we've had those debates and we've come to a resolution that our charity will always have some of its resources going to that first level of the Maslow hierarchy. In other words, it's getting people the very basic needs so they can survive. And the trouble with that is that we've talked about this, we could spend all our money in one day because the needs are so severe. And we've had to defer those needs to some degree to the bigger institutions. And when we had an interview with UNICEF, their representative in Greece, he said that same thing. He said, right now we think we're doing as best we can with the basic needs of people. You can help us fill the gaps of these larger institutions such as Save the Children, UNICEF, the High Commissioner. They can't do it all. And groups like ours can move in the spaces and provide education and these groups can't do, vocational training, maybe even business development for an entrepreneur who's highly skilled. So, those are debates of strategy, and with Artemis too, we've just discussed a lot. And that's really it. We always come together at the end and say, okay, we've got at least a course of action to test and to try and to work on.
You mentioned Dan Straka, one second, and Barry Noble and their involvement. And Joe, why don't you describe, because you were inspired, the person who actually married you who just died, Dan Straka, beautiful man. Tell a little story about Dan and his involvement, and then share about Barry and his involvement and some of the other board members.
Very quickly, Dan, I first met when I came from Afghanistan. I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I was a foreign student advisor at the University of Bridgeport, and Dan was the dean there for international students. And we naturally teamed up. And he happened to have a secretary who was from Afghanistan. So we had a natural camaraderie, and it was a 44-year relationship that brought us together. And Dan at that time was a dean, and then he went and got a law degree, and then he focused on refugee law, and actually went to Thailand to work with refugees from Laos and Vietnam. And he dedicated his life to working with refugees and actually set up a refugee center, Unitarian, it was called URISE, Unitarian Universally Refugee Immigration and Service. But it's still in operation, but he has given us in our lifetime the support emotional support, and supportive strategy that here's what can be done. And it was a 10-year effort for him to build a charity that was sustainable, and he didn't give up. And
and this was on the Mexican border.
Yeah, there he's working.
So that's why Shared Humanity is not just concerned about Lesbos, it's also concerned about all refugees. 56 million. This is an amazing number, everybody. This is more refugees today than at the end of World War II. At the end of World War II, there were about 60 million refugees. Now we've gone way beyond it. And it's not just refugees from Syria and Afghanistan. All the African nations are under such conflict. Many of them are. And so these people also are coming. To talk a little bit about that aspect. And Dan Straka, of course, represents our American story, where we have denied refugees who really are hurting. And yes, there's one or two bad guys that get in too, because that's just the nature of the beast. But you have women and children running for their lives to get into America. And I hope now with Biden, we will be able to be a more intelligent immigration process where we can empower people to become Americans, and really not just shut down the borders, but to make the borders a place of learning and innovation and thinking. And yes, you can't come in unless you got the right papers, but you can stay here for a month and develop the knowledge to get those papers, and have a lawyer help you and help people help themselves, in a sense. That's my dream.
Yeah.
Dan Straka cared so much about these refugees from Mexico and from South America and Central America. And I just wanted to do a shout out, because when I became an active Unitarian, and I was with Colin and Latifa at the GA meeting in 2015 and 16, Dan Straka really was a believer in my film, our film, the Sharps film, because it showed, particularly the Jewish audience, that non-Jews rescued them out of the love of humanity. And in many ways, my film was an attempt to open up Israel's eyes to say, what are we not doing? How can we be more like the Sharps, rather than treat every Palestinian as a terrorist? How do we make new communities? Because some of the biggest refugee camps in the world are places that I used to live in Beirut. The Safra refugee camp had over 40,000 children. And they all loved playing with me, and I loved playing with them. I'd come back looking like Pigpen in Snoopy. And we would play war games, ironically, where we would take little pellets of dirt and throw it at each other. And if it landed on your white shirt, then you can use that arm. So suddenly you're not even able to walk anymore. And this is a very fair way of saying you got hit there, like paintball. Yeah. And these kids, unlike me, were training to actually do that in their lives. And one of the children that I knew was a famous child who walked into the US Embassy with chiclets. Chiclets are candies, or like a chewing gum, and it blew up the embassy. And he's 12 years old. He sacrificed himself to produce the worst bombing, because in the US Embassy, the kids were always giving the guards of the embassy chiclets. So he thought, oh, this is my friend.
Wow.
And then that camp was shut down. They found out he came from that camp, and then I could never play with that child again. So, I have grown up, as you have, worried about refugees, seeing refugees. My backyard in Beirut was a refugee camp. And really, these were the people that I felt most connected to. And my first feeling of social justice came when I stole food from my pantry to bring it to my friend's home. And my mother kept saying to me, I had 5 Cheerios. What happened to 5 Cheerios? And, I was not a modest kid. I would just take all 5. My sister would have taken 2 and left 3. That was smarter. But the point is, I wanted to feed these children, and I wanted to be part of their lives. And we became a community. and I knew all the Arabic curse words. And for those who know Arabic curse words, I'm going to say one. And if you can ever tell me what it is, I will give you a free copy of Latifa's book. And this is khara. So, you know, I learned all the curse words, but I also learned marhaba, and I also learned shwai shwai, which means slow down. And the most famous word that I learned, shukran katir, shukran katir. So, you know, all of us have a refugee story, and that's one of our attempts with this nonprofit, is to connect. The word shared humanity implies that all of our humanities are the same. We come from the same pool, and we should treat each other that way whenever we meet each other, rather than with suspicion and fear and prejudice. Prejudice is a lot about fear and ignorance. When you're prejudiced against someone, anyone, you either don't know them or you're afraid of them, or both. And that's the problem with racism, is that underlying racism is really an emotional issue. And the emotional issue is what I talk about with love coins. The emotional issue is that I don't see you as legitimate. Even though I want you to treat me as legitimate, I don't see you as legitimate. And so that dynamic of not being able to recognize each other becomes a battle. And that's why when Zaha says in the film, then the Greek people helped me. You know, what a beautiful statement for her to say, the Greek people helped me. Like, these angels, they just helped me. And that, I think, is our real tribute to the Greeks, because even though the Greek government hasn't done everything they could, and the German government, who's been funding this whole thing, has been very parsimonious about how much to give, the Greek government and the German government in combination are saving 2.5 million refugees now. And the European Union, those members who have been willing to take in people, have also been heroic. And there are many others that we could mention. But I think Angela Merkel followed Latifa and Colin as our next Sharp Rescuer Prize. And if you remember, we committed that all the profits for the film would go into a prize each year that would support the work of Martha and Waystone. And so the first winner was Marina Goldman, and the second winner was Latifa and Colin and their family. All 7 members of the family received the prize. So that's what I'm so proud of, is that now from that point on, we have given as a family probably $50,000, more than any other rescuer prize that we've given anyone else. And we continue to be committed to give more, because we believe in their work, and we want to actually go, and you're all invited. Frederick, I think you would absolutely love it. And Sydney, you too, to come on our next trip when we can go safely there, probably next year, sometime in the later part of the year. I don't know, we'll see what COVID presents, but I want to turn it back. I want to turn it back to Colin and Latifa. And I also want to just open for any questions, any statements. Anyone wants to say anything?
So Artemis, I'll just reflect back to you about your idea about love money, right?
Right.
So the currency of love money is appreciation, right?
Yes.
That's what we're doing here, is appreciating these people, appreciating what you're doing, and appreciating Jesus.
Beautiful.
And appreciation appreciates. That's the interest. That's the interest. That's an interesting correlation too. But
Good on YouTube.
It's going to grow, and it's going to fill the world, and we'll all be well. But this is wonderful, and I hope that I do get to go one day with you and with my children, you know. And Jarette, I'm sure, would love to do that as well. She's working on her book today. That's why she's not here. But yeah, thank you.
And Frederick, what would you do, given your skills as a psychiatrist, psychologist, caseworker? What would you be interested in doing? Would you be interested in helping with some of the people with mental challenges, or would you just want to go and do whatever, follow Colin around and fix latrines and things? Colin got famous for cleaning up the place, and was awesome.
That's
carrying
great.
bags of garbage from one part to another, right? How many bags of garbage you think?
No.
Well,
But we also built
It gives it a reality.
As a therapist, you have to respect Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you got to do where people are at. That's how they get. And it's not just hierarchical, it's also a circle. People don't necessarily progress up that in a pyramidal kind of way. I mean, it's all present at once.
True.
So
yeah, in a way, I agree with you, Frederick. These people were, in a sense, whole people that were uprooted. They had all their skills. They had an identity that has been destroyed, and now they have to reestablish their identity and their dignity, which many had. And we met chemists from Egypt that had to flee, and it was, he got a job in Greece, and then he said, look, I asked him, if you could have a company, what would you want to do? He said, I'd like to recycle plastic bottles, or I could make textiles out of it. That there's a lot of talent coming in, without a doubt. So I think you're right about that. That people they maybe were integrated people when they came, but it got discombobulated and ripped apart their who they were as a human being. And now they're trying to reconfigure it reconfigure themselves in a different country with different obligations and different expectations.
Yeah.
No, please keep going, because this is a recorded show and we're going to use this every week. So we want this to be the show that we show. So, and we're going to finish in 5 minutes, but just finish with stories you want people to listen to, and refer even back to your book, and we'll bring the conversation to a close, but let's do it with a little more. I think we want to hear. Now we're like looking at the big picture. What are we going to do post Biden? How are we going to approach Afghanistan and Syria that will change the refugee problem? What can we look forward to in terms of a U.S. partner that really cares about refugees rather than one that hates them, even though he was himself a family of refugees? So let's talk about that. With Biden in presidency, when we're all talking to each other in March of next year, what are we looking forward to? What are we excited about? And what do we need to do first?
Well, to be honest with you, I really don't have a concrete answer for that, but I'm looking forward to a bright future with Biden's administration, and hopefully all good things will come out of that. And his policies so far that I've heard, the number one agenda on his schedule is COVID, and number two is the troops in Afghanistan and Iraq and peace. So I don't know. I can't speak for that administration because I am only a small person in my own household, and want to try to do whatever I can to impact in small ways with.
Latifa's muted.
Am I unmuted now? I'm muted. So it's not, I talk for hours.
No, you're not muted. Are you can't hear us?
I can now for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna just we're just about to finish. Are you guys waiting? You need to go?
Yeah, well, I'll finish with you. But
we'll finish together. I just wanted Colin and Latifa to have the last word. I think, given that the future of this work is about children, and given also that we have these parts of the EU that will not match Merkel's generosity. What can we look forward to with the Biden administration? What will happen now, and how will we be able to help in a unique way now that our president cares about refugees and realizes that the Statue of Liberty is an ethic of America, not to be negotiated by a party or a view? So Colin first.
Artemis, I think you're maybe a little more optimistic than I, because one man can only do so much, and one administration can only do so much. And we have to heal together as a country. We have to re-identify ourselves as who we are, you know, and that we are a country of immigrants, and that we have been strengthened and made very unique by our openness to different cultures, different people, different races, different ways of being. And we have lost that in many ways, or we've been divided in those concepts. And I think the healing is very important. If we can work together, at least in some areas, we can be a better example to the rest of the world. We've lost tremendous amounts of its dignity that we've lost in the world community. And I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Afghanistan, and if I would say to people I'm an American, I was welcome and given all sense of that I could do a lot to make people's lives better, or people were envious of where I came from, and I think that has changed in a very detrimental way. And even the Europeans are saying that, you know, an American is not it's not a compliment to be an American anymore. And because we are considered to be a racist country, and we've had a president that's been brutal and disengaged. So I think my hope is that we begin to get better together and start looking at these problems and do a better job on that. And I mean, just tactically, we've got to stop these wars, and as best we can, or not make them even more painful, which we've done in Afghanistan. And frankly, this may be out of my bailiwick, but had we interceded in Syria when people were demonstrating for democratic rights, we could have avoided this horrible civil war, or had an impact on the results of the civil war. We didn't do that, and 6 million Syrians had to leave their country or leave their communities, and that's a great national tragedy and a great global tragedy that I think could have been avoided. And the same with Afghanistan. It's 40 years of war. How many more years are we going to make these people suffer? And my concern with Biden is that he wanted to get out of Afghanistan when he was in the Obama administration, and he didn't. The administration didn't get out of Afghanistan. I would hope he'll look at that, his opinion and his strategy in light of the fact that the Taliban will not negotiate, that violence is being beset on the people. The people we're seeing in Greece now are fleeing a lawless country, that when a boy leaves a home, or the husband leaves a home, they're not sure, the family's not sure that they'll return. And it's just, can you imagine living in a country that has no law other than the law of the gun, and violence, and money moves around and it goes to those who have power, not necessarily, and that power is not democratic power, it's the power of the gun. So I'm going to wait and see. But I guess what we should be doing is lobbying as best we can in an educative way. That would be my hope.
Well, I second what Colin said. You know, it is a mission that is will be accomplished, hopefully, by the Biden's administration. But again, Biden has gotten so much on his plate because of what happened to this country. So I would give him a chance to do first his own, the Americans' problems that we have here. But again, with Afghanistan, I mean, I have had cousins that were born in war and died in war. And that is a tragedy that this war is continuing for 40 years of these people's lives, and they have never seen a day of peace, no matter what. And that is something that I always say to the world, to the United States. What can we collectively do to bring that kind of peace? Because I think the responsibility of one human is with all human. The responsibility of one country like Afghanistan, that is a very, very long history of feudalistic system. But at that time, there was peace during Zahir Shah. I was growing up. It was not like what's happening since the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. It has been a very tragic story, but hopefully, with all of the world's attention and with Biden's serious attention to this issue, that peace will come to Afghanistan through a strategic plan to educate people, to send out not the troops, but maybe key members of cabinets or educational people to really increase, create schools for children, schools the kind that is board and room kind of schools. That's my idea, because if you're going to school and you're still being brought up with a conservative mother or father who has the values from the time before, the kids are not, the future of Afghanistan will not change. We need a whole new regime change. We need, yes, Islam is great, but Islam has to be preached the way Islam really is. My father would always say to me that don't believe, it's for interpretation. All these religious books are interpretation, how the men interpret it. So a lot of the mullahs and the imams are interpreting it. Oh, this is against Islam. You can't be without scarf. You can't laugh in public. You can't show your face. Well, that's not true. That's how they traditionally, culturally interprets for their own benefit. And from the years and years, 100 years ago, this patriotic kind of situation is going on with the Afghan men, that they feel they're the Lord, they are the male chauvinist, and they can run this country, and women have no rights. But luckily, like I'm on a board of the Initiative to Educate Afghan Women, which we bring a lot of students in. The headquarters is in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, that we bring the cream of the crop of Afghanistan and educate them here at the University of Pennsylvania and Smith's College and many wonderful, Boston University, and then we send them back. But the unfortunate thing is the Afghan government they don't have jobs for these wonderful, amazing women. So my hope is through Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, who's an educator, will pay a serious attention to the education of the women of Afghanistan and to the education of all children of Afghanistan. And once you get, hopefully for the next generation, there will be peace, but not to send soldiers with their green beret and their, guns, because the Afghans don't even know who's Russian and who's American. They all look the same to them. So this is, what I would say. But I also want to put emphasis on, thanks to our board members, including my dear friend Artemis Chakowski, who is a great supporter of our shared humanity work, and my other wonderful, amazing friend of Colin and I, Barry Noble, who through his father's foundation, which is the Gilda and Noble Foundation, that they support us immensely, and they are our right now, as much as Artemis has given us, the Barry Foundation is also supporting us with good amount of money that we could continue our good work for Share Humanity. And they are wonderful, wonderful people, because Maya, his wife, a dear friend of mine, came as refugee to this country. Her mother worked for the very rich people of New York. They came from what was this? Not Scandinavia, Lithuania, yeah. And Maya at that time was like 13 or 14 years old. So she has this heart of gold for humanity and for refugees in general. And to put emphasis more like what Artemis said, we're not only, I mean, we're in Greece, of course, we're helping that big crisis, but we are also have helped and will help through UNICEF, through the United Nations, and through the Church World Services, the refugees that are coming to America. We have gone to the airport, we have welcomed them, we have bought furniture for them, we have rented houses for them, and we have gotten them, used cars, whatever. So we are very instrumental in that work too, and we want to do that. And actually, I had planned a trip when Dan was alive, God bless his soul, to go to the border with him. He did go to the border with the UUSC and some of our leaders from the UUA, Susan Frederick Ray and Mary Catherine Moore. They went to the border, and I was planning to be on that trip. Unfortunately, I didn't make it. But our heart is with all refugees. The refugees at our border, the refugees, the children that were separated from mothers and fathers right here on our border. And these children are still suffering during the Trump administration. My concern is utmost for those children to find their family. A lawyer was talking in our congregation, and he said he adopted a family, a mother and a son, who were from those refugees. And one day, his wife, took the kid outside, to buy him some fruits, whatever. The mother was crying when he came home, and he's he said, "Why are you crying?" He says, my kid, where's my kid?" Because she was separated from her kid on our border for 39 days, and she didn't see the kid. He was only 3 years old at the time. And she said, what if something happens to you? And because they are traumatized by the experience that they have been through. But at least in that case, that lawyer was very instrumental to bring the kid and the mother together, and then adopted them in his house and give them home. But there are many mothers and fathers that are suffering from the separation, and many children that are suffering from the separation of their parents. So that's the issue. Most of my students, I was an ESL teacher for 30 years in the New York City high schools. They were the dream kids, the kids who should have stayed in the United States, and their parents were sent back home. And they would call me and cry and say, Mrs. Woodhouse, what have we done wrong? We are Americans. And this is what happened in America under our watch, under Donald Trump's watch. He made that happen to separate families. And that is a shame, and that is horrific. And we must stand for the rights of every human, especially the humans that have been traumatized by the Trump administration and its horrific ways to deal with this refugee situation. With that, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so much for attending. I love you all. Don't forget to go to Amazon.com and own your own copy of Latifa Unveiled. You will enjoy it. If you have any question, anytime I'm at your service, message me through Facebook Messenger.